No Ben Johnson to DC. You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, I've processed it. Was clearly their top target. They were thrown for a loop. I mean, they're flying to Detroit. They're probably in the air for 90 minutes, and they get the text. Boop, 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 boop. Oh, hey, what's up? It's Ben Johnson. You're only interviewing Aaron Glenn today because I'm not interested in either your opening or the Seattle opening. I mean, it had to be a complete curveball for Harris and the team that was traveling out there to conduct the interviews. Like, they couldn't have seen this coming.
I always said it was a possibility that he would stay. And he did that last year.
Yeah.
He's
I
doing
actually
it again.
didn't think he would.
I don't think he's going to hurt his stock because he's going to come back with Jared Goff and Penei Sewell and
gonna still be the
Amon-Ra St.
hottest,
Brown.
He'll
And
be the hottest guy.
Laporta,
Yeah.
he's going to have a silly offense again.
Yeah, but
Well,
apparently he hates money.
Yeah, but what if one or two of those guys get hurt and they have a mediocre year?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's a risk.
Remember, the hottest name last year was Mike Kafka,
A
right?
couple years ago, the hottest name was Kellen Moore. He was going to be everybody's next head coach.
I mean, who was also Brady's offense coordinator, the former quarterback? I'm forgetting who it is. Byron Leftwich.
Yeah,
yeah.
he was hot.
I mean,
These guys are hot.
Can anybody find him?
And people are still using the same rationale on Twitter, and I just don't even bother because it's just people are so dumb. They're like, well, if Campbell struggles, they'll just hire him. No, if Campbell struggles, they're going to fire him too. Sorry. That's
But
how it works.
If you're a 37-year-old offensive coordinator who's had success, you're probably confident, especially given the players they have coming back, to run it back and then see what's out there next year.
He's been a hot candidate for the last two off-season cycles, and I guess he just feels like if I put up another top 5 offense, which he should.
But what else is he looking for?
I know, but you could.
I don't
what
know.
else are you
There
looking
could
for?
be
I don't know.
unforeseen circumstances that
Totally.
could happen,
Of course.
and then, but that doesn't mean that he won't get a job. But it means he might not get paid as much.
Here's the other thing.
Possible, or he could get a better job, like a lot of people are saying next year. Dallas will
Or
open
maybe
up.
he just knows.
If Dallas doesn't
maybe,
go,
That's not
maybe
necessarily
he's
a
just
better
one of
job.
these guys, just like, you know what? I just know I'm a great offensive coordinator. Maybe,
Possible.
Maybe he looks in the mirror and says, you know what? I'm not head coaching material.
Yeah, but he's
I don't
he's
know.
turning.
I don't know.
That could be
I don't
it.
know
He
what's
could
in
be
his
saying,
brain.
I'm not ready.
Right.
Which, I think is kind of soft, but he might be right.
Yeah, I mean,
he might
maybe
be
he's
right.
just
he might not be ready because Kime reported this and somebody else reported it and they were alluding to this, and I said this yesterday, that he's not. I didn't say it because it was any insight by me, by regurgitating what others said. That like Dan Campbell is the guy there. He's the one that commands the room. He's the big dog.
There's no pressure
He's
on
the
Ben
alpha.
Johnson, really.
Well, he doesn't really. He's not the big dog.
Yeah, he's not the focus.
And he may not have the confidence that he's ready to be the big dog yet. And I think it's
the real dagger,
kind of soft, but maybe that's how he is.
The real dagger is that, of course, Ben Johnson's out of the mix, and then Houston's like, well, we better re-up Bobby Slowick, and
Right.
they do.
And he's
so
hot.
now there are no real OCs out there left except for Eric Bieniemy.
They're not bringing
They're
him.
not
in.
bringing
It
him
doesn't
in.
matter,
I don't
dude.
think he's in the mix, but
There could be a
mean-
famine, and there could be 100 million people die. They're not giving it to.
There's a lot of
Bieniemy.
things, though, that we don't know.
Of course.
So we can't go inside Ben Johnson's head. We don't know what he's thinking. We also don't know really anything about Josh Harris. He has his committee, and we have Adam Peters as a new GM.
Let me say
But
this.
you have no idea if Josh Harris is offering big bucks, if
Those
he's
aren't
offering.
the only two guys that could scheme up offense.
Of
There
course
are
not.
plenty
Right.
of young guys that haven't gotten that opportunity yet. that
all
are-
right, I'd like to see the list of them. I'd like to see the list of names
we don't
and
know
what,
them,
and what their
but they're
accomplishments have been.
quarterback guys.
I know,
or-
and Clint Kubiak in San Francisco is
It
another
doesn't
guy.
matter.
Well,
I
look, you
don't know
don't.
names.
You didn't know who Ben Johnson was before he was
Right.
an offensive
There's,
coordinator.
Yeah,
believe
you're
me,
right.
there aren't two people
Yeah, you're right.
that only know how to
And
scheme
if you
up
bring in a
offense.
defensive coach, a McDonald or a Quinn or Glenn, whoever, they're
Yeah.
going to hire a smart offensive mind.
Right.
I'm not saying it's going to work,
Right.
but they're going to bring in someone that's reputable.
Don't worry.
A little part of me is actually glad this happened. Now, the overwhelming part of me is upset that Ben Johnson isn't coming here, but a little bit of me is happy because now this is a pothole for the Harris group. This is adversity for them because
they handle it.
everything's kind of been going pretty smoothly. Like they wanted Adam Peters, boom, they landed him. They thought they were going to get Ben Johnson. Okay,
But we
now-
still don't
now
know
it's
if
a
that's who
curveball.
they
know if
really
that's
wanted.
true.
Okay, but okay.
That's what we're
But if you-
presuming
but if you
based on
went-
reports.
no one
Maybe there were
knows
some
that he was a
differences.
top-
Maybe
There
they
could've
just
been.
didn't agree on some
And,
things.
and maybe Ben Johnson was asking for $15 million, and Josh Harris is like, I'm not going to give you $15 million. He wouldn't even give like Mike Vrabel, an accomplished guy, $15 million. Why am I going to give you $15 million?
Well, he's probably asking for $15 million because he doesn't really want to do it.
That could be the case too. He's a
Maybe.
self-saboteur. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the inner workings. All I know is they're going to have a defensive guy as the head coach, and I hope that guy knows a good offensive guy. I hope he knows a guy.
There's a 0% chance they hire a defensive coordinator as the head coach without a plan as to who he's going to hire as
Understood.
the OC.
I know that there's a plan. I just hope that it's a good, rock-solid offensive plan.
Well, of course.
Because I don't want to watch games where the team scores 20 points a week, every single week anymore.
Yeah.
I'm officially out of that.
Well, a lot of things have to
What if they hire
happen.
Arthur Smith as his OC?
Well, he's already been
He's already
hired.
been
Thank
hired.
God. He's already been hired.
Where's
The
he?
Steelers.
He gone.
Pittsburgh.
He gone.
He's their offensive
I'm just
coordinator.
letting everybody
Yep.
know. I'm
wouldn't want him.
fading every Steeler in every fantasy draft as long as he's the offensive coordinator. It's all right. I'm just crossing those. Najee Harris, you're out.
I don't
Jalen
think they'll do
Warren,
it.
you're
They'll-
out.
Yeah.
But Deontay Johnson, you're out. Sorry, I just can't. I can't deal with Arthur
That's
Smith.
an interesting
so
hire.
he's not going to be
But
the guy.
Tomlin does usually hire good coordinators.
Well,
Well, they
Matt
wanna
Canada,
run the-
Matt Canada stunk as an,
That's
as an
true.
OC,
But he
and now
usually-
Arthur Smith. So I don't know how.
There's something
how
about
great
Arthur
his
Smith
OCs
that
have
he
been.
likes.
Well,
say
he had a
this,
good track record before.
Yeah.
and I'll say
becoming
this:
a head
he played
coach.
a ton of close games.
He also had Derrick Henry in his prime, primo Derrick Henry. So that's
We know
basically what
Pittsburgh
he's
wants to run the ball,
making his bones.
so they
off
got
of.
somebody who likes to run the
It's
football.
fine.
Well, look, they got to figure out who their quarterback.
Good luck winning. You know what?
That's what they gotta figure
I was
out.
going to say they aren't going to win a ton of games with Mike Tomlin's still the coach, so they're going to win games.
Here was the other conspiracy theory that some people were throwing out there, and I reject it because I find it hard to believe, but that the Commanders may have told these guys, "Hey, we're actually not going to use the number 2 pick on a quarterback. That we're going to build the line. We're going to do these other things. Not that we think Sam Howell's the future.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second.
But that we don't want to bring in a rookie and have him face the exact same issues that Howell had to face.
The team has so many
We have
glaring,
so many holes.
so many
Literally,
glaring
They have
needs.
so many holes.
That sounds like one of the dumbest conspiracy theories I've ever heard
Why? It could be
in my entire life.
It could be trust the process that we're going to lose 4 games next year. We're going to have a top 5 pick again.
Look,
That
if
should be right up your
Peters-
alley.
You mean
if
win 4
Peters
games?
has looked at the landscape and said, I think all these quarterbacks, including Caleb Williams, stink, and I'm going to pick one in 2025, I'm fine with that if that's your process, if that's your
Well, he
plan.
may not
but
think
there's
he's-
no chance that they're tipping their hand to all of these prospective head coaches saying, you know what, we'd love to have you, but we're not picking a quarterback at 2. They're not
they're
gonna
not saying that.
divulge
They're just saying,
information.
just so you know, we're not necessarily guaranteed to take a quarterback. And these guys might be thinking, by the way, I'm not saying this is what I believe. This is what the theory
Right.
is.
Well, those people are dumb.
Yeah, I don't believe that either.
Because
Because I believe they will take a quarterback.
They are
I
stupid
think
people.
that they will, but
I would put money on
I do think that whoever they bring in, they could bring in God, QB1, God. He's going to struggle with the current personnel. And I'm not sure. And obviously they're going to upgrade, but they're not going to be able. It's not,
But
who knows if it's going to work?
But you know that the current personnel is going to change.
Yes, but it's not necessarily
yes.
good. They're not going to bring in all studs. They're going to bring in a bunch of guys
It's a
like
process.
the guy at right
Like you said, it's a
tackle.
process.
Like,
But you have to trust that the process is going to work, and it's going to be a 3-year process.
I don't trust that the process is going to work. Any process.
Well, I mean, if you think that they're making good decisions in terms of who they're bringing in, Adam Peters and Myers and all these other guys, and then the head coach,
I know.
if you trust that, then this team will get better.
I think it's luck. So I don't trust
If
any
they get
process.
worse, okay, well, Josh Harris
I will
is off
trust
to a
the
bad
Adam
start.
Peters process because wherever he's gone, he's associated with winners.
He hadn't
So
been
I'm just-
here.
I understand he hasn't been here.
The ghost
but,
of Dan Snyder still haunting this organization.
I mean,
Now you're the conspiracy theorist on the NFL. Look, if you have the right people and they pick the right players, you should have success.
It's
not
very
just
hard
luck.
to do. It's very hard to do.
There are some people that are very good at it.
Some
Hopefully,
people
they
been
hired
lucky.
somebody
it
who's
hasn't
good
been
at it.
hard for Adam
So-
Peters, apparently.
Well, it's very hard for Bill Belichick.
Okay, well, he had he won 6 rings before that.
I wouldn't say it was very hard. because
He had lucky. He had
the
the
last
greatest
couple of
quarterback all time.
seasons. Yeah, but they made astute personnel decisions for 20 years
I've
to
just
have
seen
a good
too
enough
many
team
great
around
coaches
Brady.
and GM. Scott Pioli was supposed to be. I'm just negative. Scott Pioli was supposed to be a genius. He sucked when he went to Kansas City. Jimmy Johnson basically did nothing after he left Dallas. I mean, Parcells had some success, but I don't know. We'll see. See if they get lucky.
But Kicks, you have to move on. You got no Ben Johnson. You got no Slowick.
It's fine. I want
You
to
got to
see.
start backing
I want
somebody
to
else.
see how the search committee pivots. I want to see what
Well,
the
we don't
next
even know if
step
they're
is.
pivoting.
I can tell you this.
They
Yeah,
may
you
not
don't know
have
if they're
wanted
pivoting.
him. You're assuming they
Yes,
wanted
I'm
him.
assuming they wanted Ben Johnson, the hottest offensive coordinator candidate out on the market.
But
I
they said they
I'm
wanted
gonna
a
make
leader.
that assumption.
This guy's a beta cuck. They may not have wanted him.
I can tell you this. The fans now are all fixated on Ben McDonald. I mean, Mike McDonald.
Yeah.
Ben McDonald, good pitcher.
Yeah, not
Mike
Ben
McDonald, also in Baltimore, their defense coordinator. I put it up as the Junkies
We've liked
poll
him.
of the day, brought to you by Van Meter Homes. And I said to the remaining candidates for the Commanders' head coaching position, who would you prefer?
Mm-hmm.
Eric Bieniemy,
Oh.
Dan Quinn, Aaron Glenn, and Mike McDonald. I didn't include Anthony Weaver. I think that covers
Yeah.
all the guys who are left.
Who was
Do
the
you have
first
Because you
one?
can only put
percentages?
4. Bieniemy, Quinn, Glenn, McDonald.
Well,
Glenn garnered 3%.
I'm going to guess that McDonald has 80%, if not more, of the vote.
Dan Quinn garnered 9%.
Okay.
Bieniemy, 11%. And Mike McDonald, over 2,000 votes, 77%.
By the way, do you find
Just
it nuts that-
smashing everybody else.
Dan
And this
Quinn-
is another guy, much like when we talked about Ben Johnson, nobody had ever heard of a year ago. Nobody really knows anything about him. All right, if you're a Ravens fan or you followed the Michigan Wolverines,
Right.
okay, maybe you're familiar. But just a meteoric rise by this guy that now everybody just blindly wants
Does
him.
Dan Quinn not have TSA pre? Did you guys see him
Yes.
lined up with all the donks
I
at the
saw a
airport
picture
yesterday?
of him walking through it.
Yeah.
I didn't see a line.
I don't know if he
I
was in
didn't see that.
TSA. Like, you got to. If
Although
you're Dan
I
Quinn,
have TSA pre.
I mean, you got to have
and
TSA
sometimes-
pre,
I
right?
have TSA pre. There's lines there too.
Yeah,
at certain
okay.
airports.
I'm
All
guessing
right.
he does.
Okay.
He's
It
been
seems
traveling
like
forever.
probably does.
If anybody that travels more than a couple times a year, everyone has TSA
But I'm
pre.
guessing he's used to like pampered travel, like Dallas charter travel. Like
Probably.
he may not even know.
Probably
like
rarely
the inside
travels
of
on his
like the
own.
guts of an airport, what they even look like.
He probably takes his family.
He's like, what,
That's
he's
about
like
it.
what are these lines? What are the?
Yeah.
Why are
That,
they?
that was a great photo because that photo came out about an hour before the Ben Johnson news. And Dan Quinn's face, I'm sure it didn't mean anything. It looked like, oh, God, I just bombed that interview.
Yeah.
I'm not getting that job. And then the Johnson news breaks.
Yeah, what a gift that fell into his lap.
Well, I think when you're in that position, you're hoping that you don't leave there without a contract,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he left again without
Right.
no. So who knows?
I think Anthony Weaver is interviewing for a defensive coordinator
with the
position.
Dolphins, I believe.
Somebody
I saw.
else pointed out that if you are, as his cakes is putting out there, and this is the narrative, the Commanders whiffed on their guy. I don't even know if he was their top choice, but the media thinks it is.
Yeah.
But if you think they whiffed on their top choice and they whiffed on Sloak, they don't even have a shot at it. Which, by the way, I'm not sure those were the top two.
Would have been
just-
my top two.
Just go ahead and hire the best coach out there that we talked about day one, Mike Vrabel.
What definitely should be in play.
I've
what
been
are you
talking about
doing?
Vrabel for weeks.
Right.
Go to the day he was available. I said he's a great coach.
I know.
I don't know if he's great coach.
I think
He's a
he's a
very
great
good
He's
coach.
been a good coach.
I would put him in the good to pretty good category. I don't know if he's great.
I think he's great.
He has a Ron Rivera-ish record for his first 7 years
He's
as
so
a head
far
coach,
advanced beyond Ron in terms of his knowledge.
but
of-
not in accomplishments as a head coach.
It doesn't matter. He got screwed there a little bit. His knowledge of what to do in the fourth down situations, late game situations,
management, yeah.
game management.
Yep.
He's light years ahead of
I
Ron.
think he'd be a
Record,
good choice.
not better than Ron Rivera's when Ron Rivera came here.
Well, you
Sometimes that's
still know he's a
deceiving.
better. You're throwing
I
out the
know he's
numbers.
better.
You know he's better.
I
you
don't
don't think
know
he
that.
is?
I know he's
I
better
think
than Ron.
I
would
think
put
he
money
could
on
get
it.
another gig and fail.
I'd put money on it.
Well, sure, because it's hard.
All right, got to take a break. If you want to chime in, no Ben Johnson.
The Lions to Ben
Haven't.
Johnson. They haven't
No,
yet.
they
But
gave him an upgrade last
there
year.
there could also be a wink, like just
Yeah.
stay.
We'll
You'll
take care of
You'll
you.
be made whole. Don't you
I'm
worry
sure
about
they
it.
will. I'm sure
Well,
they will.
He basically said, if you take him at his word, he wants to run it back and win a Super Bowl with Detroit. Unfinished business. And I could see that if you have built relationships with all these players and you feel like you were so close, it'd be hard to leave. So maybe he just didn't
Well,
have
it's hard to
the
leave a
perfect
comfortable
offer.
situation. We have had opportunities to maybe go to some other places potentially, and if it's not
Sometimes it
ideal, you
doesn't
don't
work.
want. If it's not ideal, you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
What if
It would be
this-
interesting to find out what the offer was in terms of money.
Mm-hmm.
I know
we
the
don't
ru-
even know if they offered. Here's
That's
the
true.
conspiracy
I know.
theory,
I know
Jason,
the rumor is $15 million a year.
was
but
what he was asking for.
yeah,
Here's the rumor, though. Here's another conspiracy rumor.
and we don't know if that's true.
Of course not. Here's another conspiracy rumor that he took his name out of consideration because he got the sense they were going to go elsewhere anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Might be right.
take yourself out if you know you're not going to
Could
get
be.
it.
You save some face.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Keep your
We just have
profile
no
high.
idea.
I don't know.
But I mean, they were flying to Detroit. They were going to talk to him.
Sure.
I don't
Well,
think
they were flying there also to meet Aaron Glenn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's-
I mean,
It's kind of
they
a
could have said, "All right, we're just going to meet Aaron Glenn."
It's kind of a villain move by Ben Johnson. It's not like Josh McDaniels level when he took the Colts job. Like, did he have it for a day and then he reneged, or a few hours?
That's a Belichick move.
So,
Well, but McDaniels did it too, yeah.
But McDaniels, I have on a different level. Like, he's just a bad dude.
Mm-hmm.
I don't put Ben Johnson quite on that level, but like you could have let them know, I think, a little bit earlier than when they're mid-flight on the way to Detroit. You know,
Yeah,
it's
sure. I mean,
weird.
it was
It's weird timing
But-
by him.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know.
Again, the poll of the day brought to you by Van Meter Homes. You can vote at Junks Radio. Everybody now wants Mike McDonald. Let's go to the phones, 800-636-1067.
Well, the next thing the Ravens are going to do, they're going to give him a boatload of money.
Ben Johnson's out. Slowick is out.
The
The
offensive
remaining
guys
candidates who they have interviewed at least one time include McDonald from the Ravens, their defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver from the Ravens, who is their associate head coach / defensive line coach. It includes Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, and Dan Quinn, who was defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. Am I missing anybody?
I think you've covered it.
All defensive guys now,
Yeah.
except for Eric Bieniemy,
Yes.
offensive coordinator of your Washington Commanders.
I mean, just color me completely stunned if he winds up being the OC with whoever
No,
the head
that's
coach is.
that screams of
named.
like a Zorny move. You know, like no one else wanted it, so we're going to give it to Bieniemy. If
Yeah.
they wanted Bieniemy,
except reports were from Josina Anderson, and I'm sure that was from his camp, that
He interviewed well.
came super prepared and
that's from the
killed
agent.
it.
That's from a guy trying to project something who's already
Right.
bombed 18 interviews.
Well,
Yeah, all of
and
a
I
sudden
hope
he
he's
has
super prepared. He worked here for
He
a
just
year.
has an amazing interview. All of a sudden, after the reputation on him was terrible at interviewing, I don't know. Could be a little bit
people are being
fishy.
nice. It didn't work here. It just didn't mix. Didn't work. Doesn't mean he can't be successful somewhere else.
I think he's in play. I think Josh Harris.
I think he is slightly because of
I
the,
think Josh
the scenario
Harris
it's unfolding.
and Adam Peters.
But it's very slight.
I don't know. Look, clearly the reports about Ben Johnson were incorrect. So I don't know that he was. At one point, we thought fait accompli. It's going to be Ben Johnson. I'm with EB. I don't know if we can say that he was the favorite. He might not have been. They might have interviewed everybody and said, you know what, we really like Aaron Glenn, but we need to do second interviews. And then
I
they start
think
doing the second interviews.
Different guys became the favorite as soon as Adam Peters said his number one criteria wasn't offense or defense, it was a leader. And you may not like that answer, but I believed him. And so I think that knocked some people down. All right, let's go to Steve in Bowie. Steve, what's up?
Good morning, guys. How are
Steve.
you?
Hey, bud. Good.
I remember a guy back in the day that did the very same thing. He took his name out because he didn't want to do the very same thing. Steve Spagnuolo, okay? And then when he got to be a head coach, right, it was just terrible, all right? He just wasn't ready for it. And then he went on back to being an OC. And I think maybe
DC.
Johnson
DC, yeah.
DC. Yeah, he went on right on back to doing what he was doing. Maybe Johnson just wants to win a Super Bowl with his guys, become even hotter, and then try it then. I don't know. But
Might just
Spagnuolo
be
did something
comfortable
very-
in being a coordinator. Some guys are
He
just
might.
cut out for that. Yeah.
That's what he might feel. I don't know. We don't know. That's just
No
how he
idea.
might feel.
Yeah. That guy's a huge
Thank
enigma.
God.
Yeah, thank you.
He is turning down a lot of money if they were going to offer
Sure.
him money. All right, it's certainly going to be more than what he's making in Detroit.
He wasn't going to get $15 million, but I bet you he could get close to 10.
Yeah.
Seven.
Even if he got
maybe.
7 or 8, I
So
mean,
7 for 5
that's
years. Is,
basically triple what he's making.
the guy in Carolina got 6 years. I think it's pretty standard to get 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
He's just delaying his big payday. Like I still feel like his payday is going to be there as long as his offense doesn't put up like 20th ranked offense numbers, which I find near impossible.
Just not guaranteed. That's all. I mean, and I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure he's got plenty of dough. Let's go to Dan in Connecticut. Dan, what's up?
Hey, John. Good morning.
Hey.
Dan.
Hey, bud.
Hey, bummer of a day yesterday. I'm trying to find a silver lining in all this, and I'm a small business owner, and the perspective I'm taking is that being a coach is like being an executive. It's more than just being a hotshot play calling wizard. McDaniels was a great play caller. Adam Gase was a great play caller. We want someone who knows how to spot talent, who's organized, who knows how to manage all the different departments of the business, finding guys on the waiver wire, dealing with injuries, dealing with his coordinators. So maybe we need to take off the blinders of looking for the offensive wizard. And I look at John Harbaugh as kind of the model of not an offensive guy. He's not a defensive guy, but he knows how to hire people and spot talent and create that pipeline of talent. So that's kind of my 2 cents. I don't know what you guys think about
Well,
that.
I guess, that's why they hired Peters. He's like an organization builder. Yeah. He's the guy that's going to be in charge of all that. So
yeah, but no, he's not in charge of hiring the coaching talent. He's talking about the head coach hiring the good assistant coaches, which is part of this interview process, that they're going to talk to Eric Bieniemy and say, all right, tell me who your OC is. Tell me who your quarterback's coach is. Tell me who your defense coordinator is. Tell me who your linebackers coach is. Because all that stuff does matter.
100%. And it's pretty much standard. These guys know you got to tell them who your staff's going to be.
Right, who are your guys?
Who are your guys?
Who are you going to be able to bring over?
Right.
Who are Dan Quinn's guys? Now we have to start thinking about that. Like, who are these guys that are left on the list guys? Who are Aaron Glenn's guys?
You know what? He might say, this is probably out there as a reach because he's on TV now, but you never know. He might say, I'm going to bring in Matt Ryan as my offensive coordinator.
That's a horrible idea. It's a horrible hire.
Why?
Because he has no coaching experience whatsoever. That's the worst idea I've ever heard.
20 years of running offense.
Well, I would say the big positive about Dan Quinn is his ability to put together a staff.
That should be a positive for him.
Yeah.
Right. He's been in the game for a long time.
He had all the hot head coaches that are now on his staff in Atlanta. And Raheem, who just got hired.
Dan Quinn's been coaching forever.
I understand.
He would know. You're talking about experience. He's got experience. He coached in college. He coached in the NFL for years. Started out with the Niners. He's been a hot defensive coordinator.
They have to.
Been a good head coach before. We got to a Super Bowl.
They have to disclose who they're interviewing, right?
Yes.
It's a new rule of the last 5 years or something. Because I can remember when I'll remember it vividly, when the Niners hired Mariucci. That was like a name out of nowhere, right? People were stunned.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to have that situation here. But I think people were surprised when that Canales, or whatever the guy's name is, took the Carolina job.
Right.
I think
Callahan and Canales, they weren't the top of the list of those hot OCs. It was Ben Johnson.
Right. I think what it also proves is that, and I would include us in this, none of us know anything.
We know zippy.
None of us know anything. We can have people leak stuff to us.
We're not on the inside. How would we know?
I had guys leaking me that Johnson's the guy they're talking contract. Okay? He wasn't lying to me. He had a friend in the building, and that's what the friend in the building was telling him. But it's just not reliable information.
Right.
And nobody knows. Just nobody knows. You never know what's going to happen.
We may find out in a month.
Yeah.
But right now, we have no idea.
Right.
Correct. By the way, I know you were hyping up Dan Quinn. He looks like the half-life of Ron Rivera. His win-loss record is 43-42.
This is very similar.
So,
it's a very small sample size.
It is?
I think so.
Almost 100 games?
Well, how many years was he head coach? 5 years?
He's had
5.5?
All right, terrible quarterbacks.
How come you overlook the fact that he got to a Super Bowl? You don't even mention it.
I don't overlook that.
You're not mentioning it. You're mentioning the
I'm mentioning his overall record is 43-42.
Sorry.
And to me, that just, it's very mediocre.
Yeah. He has a very similar I said this weeks ago. Went to a Super Bowl like Ron Rivera, won some games, but basically a 500 coach.
I still think it's a good choice.
He could be the best of what they still have available on their list.
Right.
His previous staff, just looking back at it, this is from 2019, was the Falcons. Obviously had Kyle Shanahan as an offensive coordinator. LaFleur was underneath him as a quarterbacks coach. LaFleur's now coaching the Packers, was with Notre Dame before he scooped them up. And then the rest of the names you're just not that familiar with. They all have their guys who they've worked with, and you're just not going to know that much about them.
Right.
Yeah, maybe there's a guy on the Dallas offensive staff that he would pluck if he's named the head coach.
A lot of these quarterbacks coaches are guys who we are familiar with in the league, like Mark Brunell's there, or Greasy's somewhere. Like these guys who are quarterbacks coaches could then become an offensive coordinator.
Of course. Nobody knows. Here's the thing is they're going to have to sell at the press conference, and they may be telling the truth. But they're going to have to sell that it's not like a Zorny situation, that whoever they hire was their top guy all along. Will you buy it?
Possibly. Yeah. Like if it happens today and they name Anthony Weaver, which I think is a long shot, or they name McDonald, I could buy that. If it lasts another 3 or 4 days, and let's say
Then you feel
Vrabel
like
all
you're
of a sudden comes play, and I have no problem with that. Let's say they call
They haven't
Vrabel and
even
they say, you know
interviewed the
what?
guy.
Then I would say, well, Ben Johnson probably was their first choice because Vrabel wasn't on the list. Now all of a sudden Vrabel's in play, or even a Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick might say, hey, wait a second, I never called Washington. Let me get down to Washington, get the Atlanta job. This is a team that could use me.
Let me give a good example for the Dan Quinn possibility. When Pete Carroll got into head coaching, before he got to Seattle, he was
miserable.
He was average
very
at best.
mediocre. Very mediocre.
And all right, I still say small sample size. It was probably 4 or 5 years with the Jets and the Patriots, but then he goes to Seattle and he's going to playoffs every year.
That's why, because I say it's the stars have to align. He didn't all of a sudden just become a genius.
I mean,
The
I
stars have to
think he
align.
was a good coach. Just where he was, you could still have bad years. You could still be a good coach and have bad years.
100%.
And I think Dan Quinn is a good coach. I'm not saying he's great, but like you said, you have to have talent.
You have to have talent. You have the right coaches. You have things that have to
The front
break your
office
way.
have to draft well. You got to
Totally.
go out and sign good free agents. Got to put a good
Totally.
staff together.
Totally.
You ready to have Brian Schottenheimer as your OC? He was with
Schottenheimer
them in
was
Dallas.
he was a hot name.
Years ago. See, he's a good
Or it
I
could
example.
think
be-
Schottenheimer
or it
was
could
on that
be
list.
Scott Tolzien.
JP.
He's their quarterback.
You go look at the hot coordinator list or the favorite coordinator list that we had.
Is
few
Schottenheimer
weeks
still
ago.
in Seattle?
He's
Where
in
is he?
Dallas.
Dallas.
He's in Dallas.
But I think he was on that list as one of
Yes,
the top
he was.
favorite coordinators.
All right, let's go to DW. DW. What's up, buddy? You're on with the Junks.
Good morning, gentlemen. And I think this situation is great for the Commanders. I think they should hire McDonald and move on. If Ben Johnson was that indecisive, then to me that shows that he's lacking when it comes to being a leader of men.
I tend to agree with you.
Initially, he said he didn't know much about Adam Peters, but he heard great things, and he looked forward to meeting and talking with him.
Right.
To go from that to he wants to stay and go back to Detroit, if he's that indecisive, they're better off without him.
I do think that I tend to
But
think there's some thread of
DW
truth to what you're saying.
DW, you might be right, but there also is probably a million things we don't know about with the
And
discussions.
also, he feels like Detroit is on the cusp of a Super Bowl appearance and possibly a win. And he feels like he'd just be starting over if he came here. Now, would he be making a lot more money? Obviously, yes. But maybe he feels like the Lions are legitimately going to win a Super Bowl
But it
next
just depends
year.
on the guy. It depends on the guy, right? Because I know coaches very well. Some of my best friends are coaches. And one guy in particular I could think of, his whole goal is to be a Division I coach. If he gets an opportunity to be a Division I head coach, he will literally go there if it's the 300th ranked school. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He wants to be a Division I head coach.
Yeah. You would think
He would leave a championship team.
coordinators want to be head coaches.
It depends on the guys, though. Some guys
I know,
are
but
different.
you would think that's why they get into the business.
Yeah.
But maybe Ben Johnson's different.
Yeah. All right.
I don't think he's different because he interviewed for 100 different jobs.
He seemed to be interested.
I mean, he was interested in becoming a head coach for a number of teams.
Right.
It's not like he said, no thanks from day one.
We've just assumed, and I put myself in this category, that this is an attractive job. Drab and JP have argued it's not because they don't have a quarterback. And there's merit to that, I suppose. I wonder if he was really, really wanted it. What did he not like? What's not to like? I mean, I don't think there's a lot of talent.
We don't know. We don't know if
Just that it might be a long
we don't know if he
rebuild.
disliked anything. Maybe the money he didn't like, but we have no idea about the
Josh
actual
Harris
team.
may be known for being cheap, but he paid a lot. He's paid a lot to those Sixers players, right?
To the players,
Yeah,
sure.
a lot.
Well,
But he's also mowed through some coaches. On the
He's probably paying
NHL side,
them.
he's
Yeah, but
mowed through coaches.
the
On the
players, you
NBA
have
side, he's
to-
mowed through coaches.
You have to pay the players.
Well,
You've
just
got
pay
a
other
minimum.
players.
You've got a minimum.
Yeah, but they don't have to give Embiid that kind of money.
Well,
You don't have to give
Embiid's going to Hall
long
of
term.
Fame.
Yeah.
But did he pay Brett Brown a lot of money before he brought in Doc Rivers?
Not when they were losing, because they knew they were going to lose.
I don't know if he paid those guys a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like we said, we don't know. We do know this. Ben Johnson, unless he has a change of heart, which I guess is possible, is going to stay in Detroit as their offensive coordinator. Bobby Slowick is going to stay with the Houston Texans as their offensive coordinator. So who's left?